Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I want to talk about my top 5 wargaming disasters. Now, I've been gaming most of my life, since I was about 13 or 14, so as you would expect I have accumulated quite a few unforced errors over the last 40 plus years. Inevitably I've learned a lot from this back catalogue of disasters, and I decided it may be fun to share some of my top 5 wargaming mistakes. Instantly, when I was thinking about this subject, I asked my friends in Posties Rejects for their best examples of my worst games, and they graciously declined to nominate anyone. Now, I could take that as a ringing endorsement of my wargaming abilities in the Rejects Shed of War, but I'm not that deluded. So, in reverse order, this is my pick of the worst self-inflicted disasters that I've had around the games table. So coming in at number 5, the Battle of Halfa. Now, this was one of the first games that I actually hosted, so this is not me playing, this was me hosting a game in the Shed of War for the Rejects. And while the game seemed to be going okay, with the intensity of concentration required running a game eventually took its toll. Battered from all sides by questions, I did eventually draw an utter and complete blank when asked on a particular ruling. Can't remember what it was. All I remember is just going completely blank. And as is the way, could I find the blindingly obvious answer in the rule book? Could I heck? I stood there, mouth agape, completely blank for a couple of seconds, although it felt like an eternity. And to make matters worse, the guys were there to capture the moment on camera. Now, if you ever find yourself playing a game and you think the umpire has the easy job, think again. I certainly won't underestimate the difficulty of wrangling half a dozen players and an unfamiliar rule set ever again. So the lesson learned: if you're hosting a game, don't bite off more than you can chew for the first game. Coming in at number 4 is the Battle of Budweis-Moravia. This was a Napoleonic meeting engagement with lead elements of both armies encountering each other between a pair of vital river crossings somewhere in Moravia. My opponents, the Saxon-Bavarian forces commanded by Ray and Sergiet, outnumbered my Austrians, but my army had better quality troops. Now, my left flank was clearly the weakest, with just line troops and some militia, but on the right I had the best cavalry on the table, and in greater numbers than the enemy. But as will be seen later, I've never been overly confident with Napoleonic cavalry, and I was just too timid in this particular game. I failed to put pressure on their cavalry opposite me, and I didn't bring forward horse artillery to harass them, and basically I gave away the initiative on that flank. Meanwhile, the Saxon-Bavarian infantry focused their right flank on my weakest units, smashing through them like they were made out of cake. To make matters worse, I had reserves but brought them on too late and in the wrong position. Too late really to change the outcome of the game or even influence the enemy's plans. Despite some flashes of incredible luck with the dice, my ineptitude eventually cost me the battle. So the lesson learned from that one: letting your enemy execute their plan unhindered is a guaranteed path to defeat. So number 3, we have the Battle of Hollands Farm. This was an American Civil War battle using fire and fury, a set of rules I actually really like. And this was one of those games where the dice gods simply had it in for me. They just totally abandoned me. I quickly lost most of my artillery to counter battery fire and an impetuous infantry charge by the rebels. I mean, I rolled fistfuls of dice for a canister shot on the rebel infantry and I didn't get a single hit. Elsewhere, one of my battalions was being battered relentlessly before its morale finally crumbled, seeing them force back off the table edge, leaving a huge gap in my line. Meanwhile, out on my flank on the river, my monitor ship went up against a rebel ironclad. 4 guns fired, and I rolled 3 ones. The reply effectively put my ship out of action, leaving the ironclad free to open fire on whatever was left of my flank on the land. And when the game ended, although it was a narrow Confederate victory, it was at least in part down to my preternormally awful dice. So the lesson learned for this game: the dice don't care what you rolled last time. So at number 2 I have the Battle of Starsiedel, which was part of Lutzen in 1813. This was just myself and Sergiet, mano a mano, in another Napoleonic game. The scenario was part of the Battle of Lutzen, in which Napoleon attempted to halt the advances of the Sixth Coalition. Now when thinking about my plan, the phrase unmitigated disaster comes to mind. Posty had set up the table historically, but frankly it was a terrible position for the French, who had the biggest tactical challenge from the very beginning. All my best infantry was clustered in the centre, across from a much smaller Prussian infantry, but both my flanks were exposed to numerically superior Prussian and Russian cavalry. When the battle was over, oh merciful defeat, I knew I had been that I'd seen the threat that was coming, but I'd somehow managed to blunder into the trap nonetheless. So the lesson learned: putting your head in the lion's mouth is a sure way to get it bitten off. So coming in at number 1, my top battle calamity was the Battle of Hal. This was yet another Napoleonic game, but this was more than just a lamentable performance. It was a calamity of absolutely epic proportions. I've mentioned this debacle many times over the years, and most recently I talked to Henry Hyde about it when I was doing the Battle Chat podcast with him. Now I commanded the 1st and the 6th Chasseurs of Cheval and the 5th and 6th Lancers, plus the 6-pounder horse artillery battle. Then early in the game I also received reinforcements in the shape of the 12th Cavalry Division, consisting of 2 Carabiniers and 2 Cuirassier units. Unfortunately, they arrived right behind my advancing Chasseurs and Lancers, creating one huge cavalry traffic jam right at the beginning of the game. But I thought I just need to turn a turn of movement to untangle them, and all I needed to do was sweep aside these 2 units of Hanoverian Hussars in front of me. The Hussars got the charge in first, and my Chasseurs countercharged. Fistfuls of dice were thrown, and I didn't inflict a single hit. In fact, I lost by such a huge margin. The Hanoverians managed to snatch both my flags, and then of course I rolled badly for morale. The remnants of my defeated Chasseurs fell back straight through the supporting Lancers and through the Carabiniers and the Cuirassiers behind them, disordering every unit in the process. My opponent could obviously smell blood, and his Hussars of course elected to follow through with a pursuit charge, hitting the now disordered Lancers and routing them. And once again the melee was completely one-sided, sending the Lancers fleeing back through the 12th Cavalry Division behind them. The enemy Hussars of course kept going, and this time their target was the Cuirassiers. They were not only disordered but side on, because they'd just come onto the table, so they got hit in the flank. So of course I lost that melee as well, and by now both my cavalry divisions were in full flight. Subsequent brigade and divisional morale checks were dismal, and suddenly my side of the table was very empty of any troops whatsoever, except of course for the victorious enemy Hussars. Lesson learned: do not give this flat-footed infantryman command of the cavalry. I'm sure there are tons more examples if I was to go back through my gaming history, because I do keep quite a detailed log of games that I've played, and a lot of them have been written up as battle reports on my blog, but by the time I'd done 5 my heart was sinking. So I'm sure we can all I'm sure there's people out there who can probably sympathise and have had similar disasters, but I consider mine to be particularly special, particularly the Battle of Hal, which has gone down in Rejects mythology, and will probably be talked about for decades to come, long after I'm gone. So it's time for a hobby update. It's been another really busy week, starting with a very productive painting session on Monday evening with the rest of the rejects. We always get together for a paint chat on a Monday. And while we painted, Richard was taking questions regarding a game that he's going to be running for this weekend. Today, in fact, as the video goes out. It's going to be a Franco-Prussian war game. We will be using the They Died for Glory rules. I particularly like these rules. It's been a long time since we've played them in the shed, but I remember enjoying it so much at the time that I actually bought a copy of the rule book, and I've been reading them this week just to sort of refresh my memory of how the rules go. And I've been reading through them, preparing for this game on Sunday, and I have to say it's a cracking little rule book. Indeed, I've decided I'm going to have to do a review flip through or something video on them, just to show you how nice they are. Not very large, but just nice, compact, concise, with some really nice artwork in it. Now, one of the things that's been getting in the way of is a review of an exhibition that I went to on Tuesday. The British Museum often runs special exhibitions that last for 3, 4 or 5 months, and the most recent one is Legion, Life in the Roman Army. Now, I actually got a chance to go around it twice on Tuesday, initially first with the wife, taking a load of video as I went, and then I went back again later when my daughter came up, because her university is just around the corner, and we walked around it again, and I got a chance to sort of see things that I'd missed. I was able to do it twice because I've got a membership card and I can bring a guest in, so I was able to go back in more than once. Actually, I managed to get a video done. I managed to put that out. It went out on Saturday because I missed my deadline for getting out on Friday. So if you haven't already seen that, go and check it out. It's only short, just over 5 minutes long, and as always, I'd recommend you go if you get an opportunity and you live within reach. It's always worth going to see this exhibition for yourself with a Mark 1 eyeball, because there's a load of stuff that I just wasn't able to get good photos of because there was inside cabinets and stuff like that, and I couldn't include everything in a short video. So it's, it's well worth you going and seeing this exhibit for yourself. So we have time for a book review, and given the theme of this Sunday's video is my appalling record of wargame defeats, this week's book review seems uniquely apt. So I'm reviewing Tabletop Battle Techniques for Wargame Success by Henry Hyde. Now, this is a book I could have done with 30 years ago. The genesis of the book is a series of articles that Henry wrote for Wargame Soldiers and Strategy magazine between 2016 and 2020, and it brings together all of those articles in a colour hardback book. It's also a Kindle version, running to 93 pages. So unlike some of his more well-known volumes, you won't end up in A&E if you accidentally drop this one on your foot. However, what it lacks in page count, it more than makes up for in utility, especially if you are new to wargaming or, like me, just rubbish at it. This book does exactly what it says on the cover, explaining the tactics of different troop types and setting practical exercises for the wannabe Julius Caesar, Napoleon or Marlborough to learn from. Not that it could have prevented my near 10-year run of terrible dice rolls, but maybe a better understanding of sound tactical principles would have worked better than my usual approach, rubbish dice combined with the technical ability of a peanut. Now, the book is broadly divided into two parts. The first, looking at the evolution of tactics for infantry and artillery. Starting with light infantry, Henry looks at their changing role from ancient eras through to the later periods when Jaegers and Chasseurs were fulfilling much the same role as peltasts and Suloi of the ancient world. Understandably, the next section then goes on to discuss the role and utility of line infantry and how they can be used in conjunction with other troop types. For much of military history, well-trained and disciplined line infantry, whether armed with a 21-foot sarissa, short swords or simply billhooks, have formed the backbone of many, many armies. Now, the section of what that I really could have done with reading many, many years ago was on the role and the handling of cavalry. Mounted troops have played lots of different roles in different times, and these are covered in 3 very comprehensive chapters. Artillery also gets the multi-chapter treatment, from early ballista and catapults through to the introduction of gunpowder and into the classic horse and musket era and beyond. Now, the second half of the book gives the reader the chance to put theory into practice with a series of scenarios designed to train the wargamer to learn the lessons imparted in the first half of the book. These are all illustrated with clear and simple maps and instructions to test the trainee wargamer. Now, most of the scenarios appear to be period agnostic, but there is a section dedicated to horse and musket era wargaming, and there is no reason why you couldn't utilise the maps for indeed any period. The deluxe colour version of the book includes a lot of really beautiful photographs that Henry quite unashamedly describes as unapologetically intended as eye candy. Indeed, the choice of photographs and layout of the whole book is exactly what you'd expect from someone with so much experience in magazine layouts and graphic design. For his 10 years as the editor of Battle Games and then Miniature Wargames of Battle Games, so it's not entirely surprising that that element of the book is really top notch. Now, Henry is one of those authors who are, I would say, easy to listen to and easy to read. So this book is written with clarity and simplicity, carefully explaining the tactical options for different troop types. It's clear when you begin reading the first chapters that he is drawing on a lifetime of wargaming experience, and like every gamer, has probably seen and done it all, learning those lessons the hard way. At least somebody's been learning them the hard way. I never really got round to that part. Thankfully, by bringing his experience to the page, you don't have to learn the hard way. So that's it for this week. As always, please join the conversation in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share. And if you want to keep up to date with weekly content from this channel, please tap the bell notification icon. So until next week, stay safe, keep gaming, and of course, keep rolling high.